Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Against all the odds of campaign logic, Donald Trump continues to widen his lead over the other GOP candidates for president. On the Democratic side, there are rumblings of a Joe Biden campaign. Here to put it all in perspective, I'm joined by the editor-in-chief of CNS News, Terry Jeffrey. Terry,
hey,
thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me. Good
now,
to see you.
Let's look at this Quinnipiac poll. Just broke. Trump's at 28% among registered Republicans. His nearest competitor is Ben Carson at 12. Jeb Bush is down at 7%. To what do you attribute this? What is happening here?
Well, I think there's two things that poll very clearly indicates. One is that people in this country are fed up with the political establishment. They're fed up with the people who work in that building over there. You look at the polling numbers for them, like Trump said, it's down in single digits. They think that the professional political class is destroying this country, quite frankly. I think that's one thing. So you have him and Ben Carson, two people who are not professional politicians.
Yeah, these are outsiders. Why are they polling so high?
Well, that's one reason. They're outsiders. They're plain-spoken. People think they say what they really think. The second thing I think about Trump, Raymond, is that he has grabbed onto some issues that Americans care passionately about, particularly the illegal immigration issue and the trade issue. Yeah. They're very intimately tied into the way people think things are going in their lives, their ability of their kids to make a living, particularly people who aren't college educated and can go into the upper middle class, professional class. And he's just speaking about it very plainly in a way that I think relates to a lot of people in this country.
It's amazing what's happening and how long he's maintained what many said initially was a boomlet. Looks like much more than a boomlet. I want to play this for you. This is Donald Trump at a press conference in Iowa this past Tuesday. He is essentially ignoring a Univision journalist, Jorge Ramos, who just stands up in the middle of the press conference and is sending questions forward to the podium. Watch this exchange.
Okay, who's next? Yeah, please. Excuse me, sit down. You weren't called. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Go ahead. No, you don't. You haven't been called. Go back to Univision. You weren't called.
Exchange, Terry Jeffrey, and exchanges like it.
I think it actually helps Trump. You know, Newt Gingrich said it last time around, by the way. I mean, after Congress, the other people that the American people aren't real thrilled about is the liberal establishment press. This guy clearly, with Univision, is part of the liberal establishment press. Trump's getting back in his face. I think people perceive that the establishment press in this country has too much power. They may have too much power over who gets elected to office. They try and eliminate people. They have litmus tests for certain issues that they'd like to say, you cannot run for president or be president of the United States if you have these beliefs. And so I think people actually appreciate a guy running for office who doesn't care about that and is ready to get back in their face.
Well, I mean, similarly, we keep hearing, oh, it's the anger of the people. It is their upsetment against the establishment and the media because they feel, the average voter, I think, feels as if they have no voice. They can't respond to these institutions. Here you've got a guy with the money and the moxie and the platform to respond. And, you know, I keep talking to my friends in the political class here, consultants wringing their hands saying, when does this thing flame out?
Well, it is truly a unique phenomenon. And the fact that Trump has the money to be able to fund his own campaign, I think, changes the dynamics a little bit. Momentum is tremendously important in presidential campaigns. So the other candidates have to look, where can they get the momentum to overcome Trump? And there's only a few places. And unfortunately, from my point of view, the process has been set up in a way that less well-funded candidates who may have strong appeal to people in terms of their values with folks on the grassroots don't have as much of a chance simply because of the way it's structured.
Yeah. Well, I also think there's something here, and these consultants keep saying, how can he get away with this? If my candidate said that, or if this candidate said that, they'd be dead. This would be the end of them. I say, look, this is the reality show insulation around Donald Trump. The character that people see on television, on The Apprentice, and all these years, he was always a blunt-talking, even nasty guy around the edges. We expect that from the character. So when he does these things, people applaud rather than grimace and run away. It's an amazing confluence of personality and a political moment coming together.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But I will say I think there's a question of whether that is the demeanor people ultimately want in a president of the United States.
That's the big question. Big question. Trump earlier this week said the Bible was his favorite book. He then was asked by Bloomberg Television to name one or two of your most favorite Bible verses. Here's what he had to say.
When I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Does that hurt him, not getting into specifics, even though he is flying high with evangelicals right now?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. He should have, what are his favorite passages? I would say one that people in politics ought to pay attention to is the commandment, thou shalt not kill. Because one of the things we see in American life today is the countenance of our political elite of the legalized killing of innocent human beings. And, Donald Trump says he's pro-life. And he ought to promote that commandment in his political campaign if he's pro-life.
This is a good segue to a story that you authored called U.S. Government Made Humanized Mice with Tissue from Babies 17 to 22 Weeks Gestational Age. What is this about? This is the National Institutes of Health. Why are we creating humanized mice to begin with?
This is a very horrible thing, Raymond, and this is something that the American people need to know about and Congress needs to deal with. What I wrote about here is that our government, the U.S. government, through the National Institutes of Health, which is a part of the federal government, itself was conducting research where they created mice that had human immune systems, and to do that they had to get the livers and thymuses from unborn babies at 17 to 22 weeks of gestational age. They were making 40 of these mice from a single donor baby, which basically meant they needed an intact liver, which they described in their article, and a thymus. Thymus is a very fragile organ in an unborn child. So these government researchers who work for the government, who are paid by the government, who are doing quote-unquote intramural government research, were creating these mice at an NIH laboratory in Montana. They say, now I found out about it by reading medical journal articles where they wrote about it. They actually wrote an article in April of 2014, last year, these government researchers, where they described how they made this mouse, and I quote their journal article in my piece, and I also link to it. People can read it themselves. I mean, this is unbelievable stuff, but it actually is happening, where they described how they created these mice using human fetal thymuses and livers. They basically created this surgical assembly line to create these mice.
Terry Jeffrey, what is the end game? What are they seeking? What is this experimentation and research about?
This particular type of mouse, Raymond, and the reason that our government is consuming human fetal livers and thymuses is meant to create a human immune system in a mouse. And the reason they want to create the human immune system in the mouse is so they can infect the mouse with HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, which won't infect the blood cells of a different species. So they want a laboratory animal they can infect with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, and then they can experiment and do research on cures, therapies, and vaccines and so forth for AIDS. The truth is they've been doing this since the late 1980s. They've been making versions of this mouse. The government, through the NIH, has funded researchers outside of the government who use these mice. In this particular instance where I'm talking about, it was the government itself. Raymond, I posed 30 questions to the National Institutes of Health. I put them in writing. People can read my story. They can look at the questions that are posted. The NIH tried to claim they couldn't answer the majority of my questions because they were related to medical services for abortion, and that they got these through an intermediary. The intermediary is Advanced Biosciences Resources, based in Alameda, California. I sent the same questions to Advanced Biosciences Resources. I talked to them on the phone. They refused to comment. So the government's provider, Advanced Biosciences Resources of Alameda, California, and the NIH, which conducted this research, would not answer any of my questions. But I asked them, for example.
And what do you think is happening here? Do you think that you believe they're creating a trade, essentially?
Yes.
A marketplace for the horrible body parts we've been seeing coming out of Planned Parenthood?
There's absolutely no doubt that here, in this particular research that the government conducted that I wrote about, the government was the end recipient of these late-term organs taken out of babies. All right?
But the government says this is perfectly legal, Terry. In their statement to you, they say this
John
is perfectly
Boehner,
legal.
Mitch McConnell, I got something for you. They say it's legal. Should it be legal next month? Obviously, in my view, and in the view, I think, of anybody who has an understanding of the value of human life, abortion itself ought to be illegal from the moment of conception. But what's happening here is a baby is reaching the 17th, 20th, 22nd week of gestation. Some other research, I'll tell you, it's beyond that. The baby is being aborted and the tissue is being cut out, and it's, in this case, in government-conducted research, they're transplanting that tissue into mice. But the bottom line is this, and I've written about this before, and I'm going to write about it some more, but with the government-funded research using mice that are transplanted with tissue taken from human babies in late gestation, and the government's direct research, the government is creating a demand for fetal tissue. And you know, this is, you know, it'd be one thing if it was a baby that died from a miscarriage or a stillbirth, and the parents said, you know what, we want to contribute. These babies are aborted. And so, you know, I would go so far as to say if the government is going to engage in this research and they think that the researchers they fund and the research that they're doing inside the NIH needs late-term organs from late-term aborted babies, then our government has an interest in the late-term abortion of a human life in the mother's womb. They have an interest in it. So I tell you what, I challenge John Boehner, I challenge Mitch McConnell, make it illegal for anybody to harvest organs out of an aborted baby, period. It's not, Planned Parenthood should be defunded, but it should be beyond that. Not a single baby should have that's aborted should have their tissue harvested to go into some government-funded research or any other kind of research, even if it's funded by the private sector.
Let me shift gears in our final moments here. We are seeing in the same Quinnipiac poll, Joe Biden is outpolling Trump, Hillary Clinton, everybody in this field, and there's a lot of rumor in this town that he's going to jump into this race, given Hillary Clinton's problems with her server and everything else, and the terrible public impression of her, the words most associated with Hillary Clinton, according to Quinnipiac: liar, dishonesty, untrustworthy. Those are the top 3 words. Do you think Biden gets in?
Yes, and here's something the Democrats really have to think about. As you know, there are requirements for getting on the ballots in all these different states. Some states like New York and Chicago, Illinois have much more onerous requirements for getting on the ballot. So they can't wait around to see if something's going to happen and develop in terms of these stories about Hillary Clinton that is devastating to her campaign in February. If they want another candidate of the stature that they think will be a formidable, viable candidate next year, they got to get someone in now.
Terry Jeffrey, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.
You can follow all of Terry's columns at cnsnews.com. Now, don't miss next week. We will be joined by Rachel Renee Russell. She is the best-selling author of The Dork Diaries, and we've got some other surprises for you. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. And if you'd like me to visit your group, school, or store during my Will Wilder and the Relic of Perilous Falls book tour this March, email me at Raymond@RaymondArroyo.com. Put Will Wilder in the subject line and send me your contact info, and we'll be in touch.